expertise through specialized experiences. You are required within your program to keep track of the number of hours that an individual completes. Internally, we are planning to develop a process to help you support tracking, but until that is completed, you will just do that individually. Professional development activities should directly be connected to student outcomes. Programs are encouraged to utilize a collaborative effort in order to choose activities, meaning your program administrator, instructional specialists, and other staff should be able to provide input to identify areas of professional growth or programmatic gaps. Examples of data sources are as follows and listed on the slide. As Doug shared this morning and yesterday, your NRS tables can be a wonderful resource to obtain information for our Monday, I mean. For example, if you notice a drop in specific instructional levels, maybe there needs to be a modification to scheduling, or those instructors should be observed. Processes should be in place to ensure classroom observation is occurring. Are there implications for low performance? Are there supports in place to ensure improvement after a gap has been identified? When you hosted a PD activity, do you notice instructors integrating those lessons learned into their instruction? What do instructors think that they want? If you don't have the capacity to provide that training internally, do you know how to obtain that training? Feel free to reach out to me if you need assistance addressing a specific training need. We are happy to leverage other resources throughout the state to support that. PD should not be one size fits all. Veteran and new instructors have very different needs. Maybe you want to have your lead teachers host a training on a particular topic because it's an area of their strength. Mentorship is just as effective as a model of standardized training. Try to consider not making every instructor participate in every training if it doesn't help their professional growth. Next slide, please. PD plans are due within 60 days of notice of grant award. So start to think about, if you haven't already turned those in, getting those to us in the next 60 days. I know some of you have already put yours within your, or submitted yours, and I will get to them as soon as I can. But I have been focusing on the Virtual Training Institute as such, so I will get responses to you guys shortly if you already have. These plans must be submitted annually. Upon receipt, I will review them and provide feedback in a timely manner. I look for activities which are supported by the data sources I discussed on the last slide. PD funding should not be used for non-instructional related training activities. For example, welcome back meetings, sexual harassment training, Title IX trainings, and other trainings that your institute might require. The goal is to use this funding directly to impact student outcomes and instructional quality. Please plan to budget for 10 hours of support per instructor and any other training related costs. So if you had brought in an outside trainer, that type of thing. Participation surveys, attendance, and brief description of each activity must be uploaded within 30 days of completion of training. So as you know, we have transitioned to using our Google folders. So do that within 30 days of completing it, and let myself or your program specialist know if you have to make an adjustment to your plan throughout the year. We understand that this is a fluid process and your needs may change as we've experienced this year with the coronavirus and drastic changes. But just let us know if you want to change some sort of training and make sure it's within the budget. If you aren't already doing this, programs should consider standardized content and lesson plans curriculum for instructional levels. My team will be sharing information about the Maryland standards in the next few slides, but this concept is intended to ensure that content delivered is consistent with each instructional level and is based on content which aligns with the CCRS and your assessment guidelines. I'm sure you all might have questions about this, and we're happy to address them towards the end of this presentation. But now I'm going to kick it to Jamie, so thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Standards and frameworks, and standards-based education should result in communicating clear expectations for students, using standards to improve curriculum and instruction, and creating professional development to help staff develop the expertise to implement standards. And the first standard that we're going to talk about today are the Maryland ESL content standards. If you haven't seen before, they were designed to help program the content in the Maryland ESL content standards align with assessment I see a comment that I'm going in and out. I hope my internet's doing okay. Ellen,
okay, it looks like Jamie is rejoining us, so let's just give her a minute. You can also remember you can turn on closed captioning, which helps if there is any audio lag, either on our side or on your side. So that might be helpful to you.
Can you hear me now? Is this better?
That is far better.
Great.
Thank you, Jamie.
I live in Howard County. I should have excellent internet. But oh well. All right, so let's talk about the Maryland ESL content standards. They define what a student should know and be able to do. And the content aligns with assessment and the National Reporting System descriptors. In each standard, you'll see it's organized by level, by skill, and by competencies. And it also includes other skills and planning resources. Some of the skills mentioned in these content standards are cultural skills, workplace skills, technology skills, and metacognitive skills. You'll also find 2 sections on unit planning and lesson planning in the Maryland ESL content standards. The next standards we'll take a look at are the English language proficiency standards. And just so you know, all of these standards are linked in the slides. So when you receive them, you can click on the image and you'll be taken right to them. So the English language proficiency standards emphasize focus and effective instruction. They correspond to the college and career readiness content standards. And they emphasize the need for English language acquisition beyond just teaching life skills. And while life skills are important, we also have to focus on workplace and academic skills. It presents 10 ELP standards, and within each of the standards, you will find 5 level descriptors. It does address the 4 language skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So that's the English language proficiency standards. The next one we're going to take a look at are the college and career readiness standards that you've heard about already multiple times. It increases rigor and adult education curriculum. And in it, you will find that there are 4 strands. And in each strand, there are anchors. And in each anchor, there are levels. So it's quite comprehensive. And the guiding questions when they created the college and career readiness standards were: 1, what content in the area of English language arts and literacy is most relevant to preparing adult students for success in higher education and training? The second question that guided the content of these standards: what content in the area of math is most relevant to preparing adult students for success in higher education and training programs? And the last guiding question was: which standards in each content area are most important for adult students? So those are the college and career readiness standards for adult education. You should be very familiar with this because this should guide a lot of your instruction. So the next one we're going to look at is the ABE Instructional Framework.
So the ABE Instructional Framework is a recently created document, and actually it's 2 documents. there's one for CASAS, and there's one for TABE. Part of that's because the length got so long that we really wanted to break it up into two separate documents. So the purpose of this is, has a few reasons. One of the driving reasons was to help multi-level instruction. It's meant to help instructors to know what skills are assessed at which in each of these assessments. So for classes that are multi-level, a teacher can easily identify what skills might be taught across all levels, and that could create a lesson that would include all levels in one lesson plan. One of the things that we included was sample lesson plans. So piggybacking on what Gina said, is we're really encouraging programs to implement the use of lesson plans and to just ensure that instructors are using those lesson plans. I want to emphasize that these are just going to be sample lesson plans, and that we are in no way advocating that this is what we expect programs to use. It's just so that instructors have an idea of what a good lesson plan should look like. So this is going to get rolled out to the instructional specialists actually on June 24th. And from there, the instructional specialists will then roll it out to your instructors.
So the next framework we're going to discuss in this section is the Digital Literacy Framework for Adult Learners that was launched in December of 2019. Seems so long ago, but it's quite recent. And the purpose of the framework is to provide structure and definition, offer a reference for evaluation, encourage technology integration, and support adult educators and learners with digital literacy. So we hear this term, digital literacy, but what does that mean? And so this framework tries to provide structure and definition. When you look at it, you will see there are 7 interconnected elements. Those elements are technical, civic, communicative, collaborative, computational, thinking, investigative, and productive. In addition to the framework, there are situational examples, guiding questions. It should be helpful for you as you try and increase digital literacy skills for your learners. In addition, to supplement the initial framework, an instructor implementation guide is being created, and it will provide lesson activities and curated resources. And I would like to take a moment and thank those instructors that participated, because the lesson activities in the instructor implementation guide come from instructors in the field in Maryland. So the next area we're going to talk about is technology, and the 3 areas we're going to focus on are educational technology, blended learning, and distance learning. Something you are all very familiar with right now, hopefully before, but even more so now. So when we talk about educational technology, I'm going to quote the U.S. Department of Education and say that technology ushers in fundamental structural changes that can be integral to achieving significant improvements in productivity. Used to support both teaching and learning, technology infuses classrooms with digital learning tools such as computers and handheld devices, expands course offerings, experiences, learning materials, supports learning, builds 21st century skills, increases engagement and motivation, and accelerates learning. So if technology can do all of those things, we should encourage it, and we do in Maryland Adult Education. So if you're using educational technology now, you should know that it helps to differentiate instruction. And you can see on the screen, it also has to support instructors and provide accessible options. And the last area that I was going to discuss is blended and distance learning. There's a lot of that happening now. And if you have not yet seen the blended and distance learning guidelines, you really need to take a look at it. In it, it defines learner types. What's the difference between distance students and blended students or learners? It explains what proxy hours are, and just as a brief summary, proxy hours allow instruction that students do outside of the classroom to count towards their instructional time and allows hours to be put into LACIS. There are different types of proxy hour models that you can find in the blended and distance learning guidelines, and it also talks about how it needs to be documented. It also lists other curricular options. So there's curricula that's being used right now. And if you aren't sure where to start, you can look at that list and see what has been approved previously. The blended and distance learning guidelines have been updated as of May, and you will get access to the updated document. That also means that the proxy hour approval forms have been updated as well. So for FY21, every program will need to resubmit their proxy hour approval forms for this next 3-year grant cycle. If you have any questions about that, let me know. You know, if you've worked with me before, you know I'm here to support and answer questions, and I try and be as responsive as possible, especially now when things are happening so quickly. So that's all I had to share. I think we have time for questions. And I'm going to look in the chat box. Are there any questions about the standards, about the frameworks, about technology, or blended and distance learning?
So the only question so far was from Jesse, asking if we could give a date from the 60 days from the grant award. So we will calculate that and share that via email. So any questions about professional development or the standards or online and blended learning?
Well, I'll say I look forward to seeing your digital literacy implementation plans in the PD plan when you submit it.
All right, well, I thought we finished the 9 o'clock session quickly, but that was nothing compared to this. So you are welcome to get your hour back. For those of you who have IELTE, IEP funding, we will see you at 12 o'clock. And let's see, we're getting a couple of questions. Angela, when do you want the forms submitted for reapproval? I'm assuming you're talking about the proxy form.
If you're talking about the proxy hour approval forms, you can start submitting them now. Just clarify that you're requesting it for FY21 grant cycle, and that would be fine. What we'll need to do is send you the updated guidelines and the updated proxy hour approval form, and we'll do that.
A question from Elaine. Ellen, are we still having the meeting next week that was previously scheduled next Wednesday? No, that meeting was canceled when we had the Virtual Training Institute scheduled at the same time and these meetings occurring this week. So if that is still on your calendar for next Wednesday at 9:30, please go ahead and take that off. Okay, a couple of more questions about the proxy hour form. So Jesse, yes, you do need new forms for fiscal 21, correct, Jamie? Yes, Jamie's responding in the chat box that all proxy hour approval forms need to be submitted for the fiscal 21 grant cycle. And Elaine is asking, who do we get the updated proxy form from?
So I'm thinking that when you receive the slides, we can include those documents as well. Does that sound like a plan, Ellen, or should I send it separately?
There is going to be a lot of information with the slides and the links, but we can do that. Are they ready to go today?
They are, yes.
Okay, then we'll include it here. The other thing that we are working on is shared Google folders so that you as program administrators and the key leadership positions will have their own folder on Google Drive. And that's how we will gather and share things like this, things like common forms and common information. So you'll be getting information about that over the next couple of weeks.
So there's another question in the chat box. Since COVID-19, we have been a lot more flexible with proxy hours, especially when it comes to using textbooks. Previously, and when COVID-19 is done, we really like to have data-driven information. And so that means that if students are using textbooks, when they're in the class, we like for information to be taken of how long a student will take to complete a lesson. But when COVID-19 happened, we didn't have classrooms to collect that data. So what programs have done, they have submitted what they believe is the estimated amount of time for textbooks, chapters, and lessons. The benefit of that is I do have a list of multiple textbooks and how much time it takes to complete a lesson or chapter. So to answer Jesse's question, I have that information. And so you can submit the form, and based on the information that I have and based on the information you submit on the form, we will have a discussion and clarify how much time should be assigned to a lesson or a chapter. I hope that answers your question. Correct.
All right, and just to buy a little bit more time for your questions, if they are rattling around in your head, shameless plug for the Virtual Training Institute that is happening next week. Gina and team have been rock stars putting this together during a very trying time. So June 8th, 9th, and 10th, we hope that you join us, that your staff joins us, that your instructors join us. There are 3 days of learning, very targeted, innovative, thoughtful, professional development from your instructors, by your instructors. It's a fantastic way for us to share information across programs. The sessions vary. There are 30-minute teaching tips to more complex 1-hour discussions around topics that are very specific to the classroom experience. So we hope that you will share that information widely. We will be sending out more information. The registrations are available now, so we hope that we see those sessions getting filled up. All of those presenters have put a tremendous amount of work into those presentations, and they deserve to be rewarded by having active and engaged live participants. Of course, they will all be recorded if it doesn't fit into your schedule. So the recordings and the handouts will be available after the Institute occurs. So, all right, it looks like that's about all the questions. So we will take this opportunity while we have everyone together and say thank you so much for attending these 2 mornings. We hope this provided you some good information as you plan over the next month. We are very excited from the state office to kick off the new grant cycle and the fiscal year 21 content. So thank you so much for your time. If you have IELCE funding, we will see you in about 50 minutes. Thank you all.